Hello, everyone. It's so good to see you. My name is Dr. Marla Parker, and I'm a professor at Cal State LA in the Political Science Department, and I am a faculty fellow at the Center for Effective Teaching and Learning, which is also on campus. And it is my pleasure to introduce to you a really cool project that we're working on at the center called Teaching with the Future in Mind. And it's all about helping higher education instructors build and develop their career readiness pedagogy. Now, you might be wondering, what does that mean? So pedagogy is simply the science, the art, the methods, the practices, and the structure of teaching. And with career readiness, you might be thinking of a few things immediately. Something like resume writing, yes. Cover letter writing, absolutely. Interviewing tips, yes. And job searching techniques, yes again. However, when we're talking about career readiness, we're not just focused on those important elements, but we're really focused on those meta skills that students need to have no matter what job that they're in. And so career readiness pedagogy is all about how to help teachers bring structure and curriculum and content and teaching methods and practices and exercises into their classroom that can help students prepare for those meta skills. Now, the first step in developing your career readiness pedagogy is to really go deep within and do some serious self-reflection. So I call this bringing your inner wisdom to the forefront. Now, this is really important because oftentimes as faculty, we tend to focus on speaking on our background in terms of our research interests, our papers, our teaching expertise, and those are very important and very useful for students to know. However, we're more than just our research. We're more than just our teaching. We are entire human beings who have had vast experiences in academic and non-academic careers. And so when you're reflecting about your whole entire career trajectory, what's important to note is to think about, well, what were not only the academic, but also the non-academic experiences that I've had that helped me to develop these meta skill sets that have served me quite well. And also what you're thinking about with self-reflection is the behaviors and the habits and the support systems and the resources and the mindsets and the perspectives that you've had and developed that have served you well to help you to not only survive, but to thrive in your own career trajectory. So it's really important to do that as a first step, because when we bring those things out, we are much more able to consciously tap into them and then bring them into our teaching practices. And so for this multi-part series that I'll be doing, we're going to be starting with that first thing. It's that self-reflection and bringing that inner wisdom outward. So with that, let's get started. Okay, well, here we are, teaching with the future in mind, practices for higher education instructors that promote career readiness for students in the post-pandemic world. And once again, I am your guide, Marla Parker. I'm a professor at Cal State LA in the Department of Political Science and a faculty fellow at the Center for Effective Teaching and Learning. All right, so with part one, as I mentioned in the introduction, this is about reflection. So this is part one, the power of reflection, bringing your inner wisdom outward. So this is all about reflecting on the entirety of your career trajectory. So not just your academic experience, but even your non-academic experience. And even before that, how you were thinking about career and what you want to do. So this is really important because, number one, it takes you back to being a student again, and that can help you to develop the empathy necessary to develop this pedagogy that can be helpful for students. So just as your students that you have in the classroom today, how they might have excitement, but also maybe some trepidation about the world before them after graduation, remember that you likely had the same thing as well. And so when you're doing a reflection about your entire career trajectory, you're thinking about the thoughts and perspectives that you had, but then also those behaviors and those practices and habits and systems of support that you developed that helped you throughout your trajectory as well too. And the second thing that this reflection exercise does is that it humanizes you. Students love stories, and they love to know our stories where we have our ups and downs as humans. All right, so I personally love quotes, and for me, quotes are a really great to help me ground myself so I can really focus on what it is I'm trying to do. So this is one of my favorite quotes about reflection by educator Margaret J. Wheatley. And she says, "Without reflection, we go blindly on our way, creating more unintended consequences and failing to achieve anything useful." So what this quote reminds me of is that I have to meet students where they are and not always think that I know best from an expertise standpoint, that I need to humanize myself and that I have had failures and I've had consequences. And one of the best things that I can do for a student is to acknowledge them and to share with them my life wisdom. And this brings us to our second quote here, which is wisdom is wealth. And so the value that we bring to our students is not just what we know from a disciplinary or a technical standpoint, but just the wisdom that we've gathered through life. So here is the first reflection question for you. So what behaviors, habits, actions, activities, mindsets, skills, support systems, relationships, and resources that you developed that supported your career trajectory and journey? And how did these dynamics help you with your career highs and lows? So again, harkening back to that initial definition of career readiness, it's not just about the technical knowledge that you developed, but it's also about these meta skills. So how did you develop communication? How did you develop leadership? How did you develop the ability to shift and to really deal with uncertainty? And that's going to be the reality for a lot of our students, especially with the current job market. The second part here is, how do you think your cultural identity, that includes the norms and values that are part of your culture, personal principles, and your environment, impacted your career decision making and opportunities? Now, I ask this question because that's a really big influence for how our students actually make decisions. So they may have family pressure. They may have pressure based on their culture. There may be expectations about what kind of careers that they can pursue based on things such as culture and things of that nature. But they also have their own personal desires and values, and oftentimes they want careers that align with those. So again, taking yourself back into the mind of a student, back into that stage of a student, think about how your identity and your personal principles and your environment impacted what you pursued as a career and even how you may have changed your career. And here's another one. Upon reflection, what would have been most helpful for you to know from your teachers to prepare you for your career journey and your trajectory? So, this is kind of like being the teacher that you needed to have. And so, again, this is really important because it humanizes you and it can help you to develop more empathy and bring that into the forefront of your teaching. Okay, so now that you have done all these things, well, how can you actually apply this? So here are just a few ways, and these are not the only ways, but these are just a few things to get you started. So at the beginning of the semester, maybe you can create a getting to know you video or a written story describing your full background, what you learned from your experiences, and how they have gotten you to your current position. And what's really important here is to create a safe and inclusive space for students to ask you questions about your journey, as well as express their hopes, dreams, and even anxieties about their future without judgment. Now, your experiences might be different and your realities might be different from various students, but it's really useful to help you all to find common ground. And again, I guarantee you that students love stories and they love to hear from people who are in expert positions about their own vulnerabilities and how they overcame them, and even how they leverage vulnerability for their success. So now during the semester, right, we talked about what you can do at the beginning of the semester or maybe the quarter if you are on a quarter system. And during the semester or during your quarter, when you're implementing an assignment, I want you to explicitly write down and discuss how that assignment can help students develop those crucial meta skills for any career, such as time management, organization, building social capital, leadership, flexibility, resiliency, critical thinking, creativity, communication, self-care habits, and more. So I will share with you an example. So one of the things that I have my students do sometimes is an informational interview. So as I mentioned before earlier in my video, I'm a public administration professor. So I'll have students actually interview public servants in many different areas and many different kinds of organizations. And I want them to accomplish a couple of things. So number one, I want them to help develop those research skills, those investigatory skills that can aid in problem solving. I also want them to be able to take what they've learned from the course and see how it can apply to what this interviewee is discussing with their own job or a project. Now, another thing that I want the students to realize, though, is that by doing these informational interviews, that they are building social capital. So I am very explicit up front when I give this assignment. I literally say, one of the reasons I'm giving you this assignment is to help you build social capital. And then I go into the benefits of social capital. So that's what I mean when I talk about how you can implement an assignment that has these very intentional, very explicit additional directions and additional insights so that students can understand, oh, this is why this assignment can help me to develop a meta skill. Now, at the end of the semester, one of the things I invite you to do is to actually hold a debrief chat where students reflect upon what they've learned in your course and how they can implement or how they can anticipate using what they've learned and what they're excited or even nervous about for the next phase of their journey. And again, start the chat with your own story. And so that is it for me. So with that, I hope that this really quick part one was useful for you and that it gave you food for thought. So again, take a lot of time to think about those questions. And what I really want you to do as well is to think about inviting someone else into the process with you. And when you're doing this with someone else, you can actually pick up on and maybe think about a few things that you didn't think about from your own life. So again, the process here is to reflect by yourself, reflect with someone, and then bring those practices into your teaching format, into the classroom. And again, what I've suggested here are just a few suggestions. I'm sure that you can come up with many more, and I do recommend that you create a learning community around this and share with your fellow faculty and instructors how you're doing with implementing these particular examples. So thank you once again for your time, and I'm looking forward to bringing you part two.